You've been focused for many years now on placing women on boards, but now you are opening that up to men of color as well. Why the change?
Well, Emily, as you know, when we started the board list 5 years ago, gender was its own white space in terms of diversity. And while we are not done on that topic at all, today when we look at the diversity stats by race, they're actually even more abysmal. 9% of people of either gender are African American on Fortune 500 boards. Latinos and Latinas is 4%. Asian representation on boards is 4%. White women and white men make up the majority still of what's on boards. And so it was time for us, when we looked at our mission, to really understand that the gap and the lag in race and minorities is as big as it was on gender, and it's time to open up that funnel as well.
The Black Lives Matter movement has created a new urgency behind this. How is that impacting companies' recruiting strategies, what they're asking you for?
It's a great question. So first and foremost, we surveyed our own directors on what the impact of Black Lives Matter has been. And we found three things. First, and most obvious, you know this, is over 60% were board members to companies that put out a Black Lives Matter statement of any kind. Another 55% said that in their own companies, they changed their diversity policies internally as a result of Black Lives Matter. And then we surveyed those same directors on what they think Black Lives Matter has done for corporate boardrooms. 75% said they believe that actually racial inclusion in the boardroom should be mandated. So I think what Black Lives Matter has done, it has moved sort of this into the mainstream consciousness of business at every level with regard to customers, employees, leadership. This is now the topic.
We're seeing a number of companies set targets. Do you think there should be quotas? Do you think there should be mandates about representation?
You know that for a long time, I believed that maybe the Rooney Rule was enough, i.e. just having a pipeline, where what you interviewed was a diverse slate. I think California and other actually countries outside the United States have shown that there is more progress when you actually do insert a quota or a mandate. So over the years, I've certainly become more a fan that if you can't get there voluntarily and need a push, that a quota may be the way to go.
Former Vice President Joe Biden has chosen Senator Kamala Harris as his running mate. Talk to us about what the significance of this is, especially given her ties to California and Silicon Valley, and how much you think this can actually move the needle on some of these issues that we're talking about.
Yeah, I think you're hitting on two things about Kamala that are interesting. Number one is her own diversity, race, gender, and what that means, and sort of just being representative of the population that she and we are trying to serve here in the United States. And so I think Kamala's attunement to those issues, I hope, issues like parental leave, family leave, right? Issues that really help us take advantage of all levels of the workforce with proactive policies. I hope there'll be movement there. Clearly, on issues related to tech, Kamala has been out in front, and I think you're aware of this. She has shown, I think, over the years, a pretty tough stance on tech, but also a pretty balanced one. And I think for the folks in the tech industry, at least our belief is that she is well educated on the issues. And I think that tough but fair is something I think that we could all, live with and hopefully find our own voice in.
I just spoke with Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg about this topic as well. And one of the things she's concerned about is that in the middle of a pandemic, it's going to be even harder, despite some of these great examples like Kamala Harris. It's going to be even harder for Black women to advance because so much of advancement is dependent on informal and casual time in the workplace with your managers that Black women, according to a new Lean In report, just aren't getting. How concerned are you about that the pandemic could actually set us back on some of these issues?
It's interesting. My own view is maybe slightly more to the middle, in the sense that when we're all on Zoom, we're all on Zoom. So I think, Emily, in a scenario where some people are having one-on-ones and others are not, one could argue that this would set us back further. But I think almost the entirety of our culture has moved to Zoom. So ironically, in some ways, Zoom provides a level playing field for communication, versus the person who's in the office right beside you, who you cross paths with every day. So maybe Zoom in some way should be seen as an equalizer, at least for conversation. Yes, I think the issues are pretty serious, though, and they remain, and it's going to take far more than you and I, being equally able to chat on Zoom as two other people to solve some of the more systemic issues.
You have a long history of working in Silicon Valley, working in e-commerce. You worked at Amazon for many years. You were the president of StubHub. Curious how you think the pandemic could fundamentally change our buying habits, our shopping habits, and what is different even when we hopefully come out of this, even when there is a vaccine. How do you think our lives and habits will be different?
Well, I think there's some things that we're seeing that are, I think, systemic shifts in e-commerce and some that are temporal. So on the systemic side, if you think about it, everything in and around home convenience, like groceries. Groceries just took a massive step up in e-commerce penetration. It used to be good to have, 2% of total online grocery sales or total grocery sales online. I think we're going to see just a fundamental shift in categories where you can buy from home for convenience, and I don't think that's going away. So it's a perfect example. On the other hand, things that I would say are much more related to categories where when you have your spare time, you indulge, could be more temporal in nature. So I think we're seeing, of course, lots of people doing re-commerce from their homes. They're, at home, emptying out their closets and reselling. Everybody from Poshmark to Tradesy to eBay is benefiting from that move, right? But I think it's very related to people's time, not necessarily their structural habits. As you spend more time at home, you notice more of these things and take advantage of things that are maybe, really endemic to you being home, like decor, or, as I said, even cleaning up your house. So I think that some of these things will be temporal, and it'll be interesting to see which of these growth spurts, settle down as people go what we would call back to work and actually physically move out of the home. But I think anything in and related to convenience, as I said, I think are going to be some huge and continuous winners. One last note, of course, less e-commerce, more subscription oriented, but still like anything in and around healthcare. The delivery of healthcare has just taken a huge leap forward, and that's also quite structural, I believe.
Just last question, there's been so much talk about work from home. Some companies say they're going to allow it forever. Some executives believe it's a fundamental shift. So much more work will be done remotely. But then there's another camp that says, when there is a vaccine, things can quite easily just bounce back to the way they were. What do you see?
I think that what we're going to find is people are going to be much more demanding of flexible work schedules, because I think what you quite likely hear, like I do, is that on the one hand, people love the flexibility of losing the commute time. On the other hand, they miss social interaction. But I think what we'll find is negotiation for flexibility in work schedules is the enduring, if you will, shift and trend. And I think companies that can't offer that flexibility are really going to suffer in terms of talent recruitment.